Hi there, this is Jenny Stillwell and welcome to the 7% Club podcast for the 7% of business owners who break through 2 million in sales and for those on track to join this club. This podcast is to help you upscale. In today's episode of the 7% Club podcast, I'm talking with Heather Porter. Heather has 15 years experience in digital marketing as a business owner, consultant and speaker. She's founder of the agency Website Love and has built over 600 websites that have on average at least doubled lead conversions for her clients. She's also hosted the podcast The Hustle Rebellion, where she helps scaling businesses to stop hustling so hard for growth. Heather loves to teach too. She's an Amazon Kindle #1 bestseller, co-author of 4 business books and trainer of that social media show on the Bizversity business app. She's also one of 5 Meta-certified lead trainers in Australia and teaches digital marketing and social media marketing at Sydney's University Centre for Continuing Education. In her spare time, can't imagine there's a lot of that, but in her spare time she volunteers as the head of community engagement at a Sydney women's shelter and raises her 2 stepsons. Wow, welcome Heather.
Thank you, Jenny, for having me. It's fun to hear the intro, right? Because you forget some of your accomplishments until you hear that on paper. So, hey.
Wow. So, yeah, very impressive. So I just wanted to talk about some of that before we really get into today's topic. But
sure.
Let's just share with our listeners a little bit about your background, because I think you've got a very interesting background. And if you could share some of that and then how you came to be founder of Website Love.
Yeah, happily. Thank you. So I actually completely fell into digital marketing. It wasn't even my plan of where I thought I'd be. I ended up, I started in events and I was actually working for Tony Robbins, the inspirational speaker in the States. And running some of his seminars, and then ultimately my path led me over to Sydney. So I've been in Sydney for over 20 years. And while I was here, because of my background with Tony, I started working again in the personal development industry, running seminars in Australia and around Asia and the UK. And around 2008, I remember one of the speakers I was working with was like, "Hey, Heather, there's this thing called Facebook." How do I use it? How do I use it to talk to my community globally all the time? And I was intrigued. So I started learning a little bit about social media, and I ended up building a website for him. At the time, it was a members portal. We had 18,000 members at launch.
Oh, wow.
It was fun. It was good and challenging because the tools back then were not what we have now.
And 18,000 members, you'd need to get it right, wouldn't you?
You do. It was interesting. Let's just say that. But so that kind of got me started in that journey, and I was quite interested, and I really liked it. And so I changed gears from traveling on the road all the time and running these events to digital marketing. And ultimately, over the years from that, I started a small agency with a business partner, did that for a while, didn't work out. We went our own ways. And then Website Love was born around 6 years ago. And that's what I have been doing ever since, in and amongst the speaking and the lecturing as well.
That's fantastic. And you obviously, as you said, you loved it, you were interested in it. And it's obviously something that comes to you naturally, unlike the rest of us who need people like you for our digital marketing.
Thank you.
Okay, so with all the business commitments which I listed in your intro and philanthropic and family interests, it sounds to me like you've got a bit of a hustle going on, but I know you prefer flow to hustle,
yes,
as do I. So how do you stay in the flow and make it all work? Because that's a lot of commitment with all the lecturing and, all those things.
It is.
So how do you stay as calm and in the flow as you are?
Years of practice. No. So a couple of things. I live and breathe by my calendar. That is absolutely where I block out time. I'm very into my health, and I work out 4 times, maybe 5 if I'm lucky, times a week. That is penciled in, and I do not that is there permanently. So my health is very important to me. And also my appointments, just understanding what I have coming up. So I'll block out prep time, drive time for appointments. I color code. I know it sounds nerdy, but I color code everything. So I know these are podcasts in blue. These are, appointments in red, and whatever it is, it's all color coded so I can see also where my effort's going to be spent. So I've really learned a good calendar system, but also mindset's been big, Jenny, over the years too, because just remembering to breathe, just trying to not take things too seriously. That's, coupled with the calendar, that's a big thing for me, is just working really hard on grounding and breathing and just remembering, when we go through really hectic times in life and business, this too shall pass.
Honestly, that's something that I say. And I think a lot of that comes with experience, because you get to a point and you've been through the ups and the downs, and you've come out of the down and you've gone back up, and you know that this too shall pass. And it's so important to take time out, to exercise, look after yourself, get fresh air, do things that just make you smile.
So true.
Absolutely.
That's it. Well said.
So, next point, author of 4 books, bit of a high achiever here, but anyway.
Yes, I am.
Lecturer in digital and social media marketing. What are the fundamental lessons that business owners need to learn about their marketing, if we look at sort of the bigger picture of marketing?
Sure. So really a couple things come to mind, and this is not only how I work with clients, but when I'm doing speaking engagements or lecturing, I always start with looking at the offer or what you're promoting to the market fit. So the thing that you promote, and I think about, some service businesses where they're like, oh yeah, I have a coaching package, for example, and I'm promoting a free strategy session like every other person does.
Yes.
But the idea is that you need to uniquely package that for your market so it makes sense to them and into something that's more of a valuable offer rather than a phone call, for example. So you always want to start with what it is you're actually promoting, whether it's at the free entry point or the actual package that you're selling, or the service package or whatever that is. So you look at that and you look at the market that you're promoting that to. Is it something that they actually want desperately? And then you move on to the whole customer journey. So really mapping out the fact that we as human beings, we don't normally put our hand up unless we're in market for something and we're desperate for it. We don't normally put our hand up and say, yes, I want your $10,000 offer. You have to be nurtured. So customer journey is just simply like a marketing funnel, from awareness into consideration, into conversion or purchase, into loyalty and advocacy. And when you're thinking about your marketing, you actually need to have marketing touch points or communications for every single step in that journey. It's really, really important.
And do you find that the clients you work with, obviously they come to you because they need some help in this area.
Yes.
But do you find that a lot of service-based businesses in particular create or offer services because they can, and because they look at what everyone else is doing and they think, well, we need to do this and I need to do that and I can create this? And it's like, hang on a minute, just stop. Who are you trying to talk to? Who do you want as a client? Yeah. And as you said, that fit, the offer and the market fit. Do you find there's a lot of lack of fit when clients come to you?
I love that. I love what you just said. Yes, absolutely. Especially when our businesses are growing, if we've already gotten them off the ground, where we can go into a reactive phase, like you suggested, where you're sort of sitting there going, oh, comparisonitis, and yes, they're doing it, so I should do it. And you start to offer so much that you don't do anything quite different or well. So simplification in what you offer and being known for something is incredibly powerful. The other day, I was actually speaking in the Philippines, and one of the fellow speakers at this conference, I loved what he was saying. He said, I used to try and do everything in marketing for everyone. And then one day I said, do you know what? We're really good at LinkedIn. So he became a LinkedIn agency very, very specifically for individuals that want to be the sort of the ambassador or the face of a business. So sort of thought leadership. And he basically then also said, you know what else doesn't work for us is the constant social media posts. Really, what works is running an event quarterly. People try before they buy because we are quite high ticket, and that's all we do. And he said we've scaled and grown to a ridiculous amount really quickly, globally, referral partners, everything, because we finally actually went backwards to decide on what we're good at and just focused on that and just one simple marketing funnel. And now he has a team of like 100. It's incredible.
Wow, I love that. I really love it because it takes a bit of bravery to take everything away and focus on what are we really good at, what works for us, what do we want to be doing, and just letting go of all that other stuff and being brave enough to say, no, we're not doing it. It doesn't really work for us. So that's a fantastic story. I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
So when do companies need to start thinking about this? You know, what stage of growth or what size?
Whenever you can would be the answer. The sooner the better. I all the time when I do the Center for Continuing Education, what that looks like for the university is essentially like an upskilling center, right? So you have huge corporates, like we're talking, some of the biggest multinationals will send people to my courses, and they still even come in and say, oh, customer journey, I don't think we have one of those. Or, oh, our website's just a big mishmash of lots of text and pages that's confusing. Or, oh yeah, we have a database of 50,000. We don't do anything with it. So even the biggest companies with the big, huge budgets still are starting now with some of this stuff.
Isn't that incredible? Mm-hmm. I know it happens because I did some sort of large scale consultancy to very large corporates a long time ago.
Yeah.
And there's a minefield of, I don't know, there's things that they've been doing wrong, not doing at all, neglecting customers. But then there's a huge opportunity on the other hand. Things like you said, we've got a database of 50,000 people or more. And, we haven't looked at our customer engagement journey for ever.
Forever.
And yet all the money they spend on, training and leadership coaching and systems and technology and all these things are so fundamental to business growth. And it's kind of gets back to what is your offer, who is your market, and what are the core messages and how you're going to get it out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
And also being proactive about it as well and not waiting till you need it. It's another thing you'll hear oftentimes stories of people going in, we go through recession or harder times of business and people immediately cut back on their marketing budget, which is actually how people discover you. So it seems kind of contradictory around, that, whoa, hold on, come back to the thing that actually generates the business.
Yeah. And it sounds like you work with both product and service-based companies. Do you find there's particular differences with each, how they approach their marketing, or the same sort of challenges apply?
Yeah, look, our what we do in my business for the services we deliver are definitely more to service businesses, but a lot of the teaching and coaching that I do also falls across e-commerce and product. And ultimately, what's interesting is it's still the same. Really. I mean, you have to have a really great product or offer for people to find you. So oftentimes if I start with a product-based business, I'll say, what's your best seller? Or what's the first product people normally buy when they come to you? And that's really where you start, because that's an easy place to start, is because you already know the market wants that particular thing. But you still do the same as a service business where you go, okay, once I have them in the door, what do I do next? What are my emails or my retargeting ads, or how am I getting them to ultimately become more valuable over time with a longer journey and more purchases? So I feel like it's very, very similar with pathways and marketing and follow-up for both businesses, really.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So with your websites,
yes,
what are some of the things that are going on before your clients engage your services, and then after they've worked with you and you've developed a new website or you've refurbished their existing one? What is it that you look at that enables them to double or multiply their leads?
Perfect. Well, I think of a couple of examples straight away with that. So one of them was like a chiropractic sort of wellness center, not just a solo practitioner, but wellness. She had a team of 15 practitioners. And, I was saying to her, look, so what's happening? She goes, marketing doesn't work. And I said, okay, well, let's start with what you're marketing. And she said, well, a free consult. So straight away I'm going, ding, ding, ding. Okay, no one wants to come in for a free consult. So you packaged that consult as an offer, which was ultimately an incredibly valuable experience. It's everything she did anyway, but just packaged differently or positioned differently, right? So you have your massage and your x-rays and your like posture analysis. And it was a stack of like 10 different amazing things. And then we wanted to make it a no-brainer. So a ridiculous price, but a price still, so people would value it. So something like $47. And that was the first place to start. And it was basically pulling out what she did already, repackaging it, and then having a really solid place to send people to sign up, a landing page. And what's interesting about this is oftentimes it's not like, great, I have a great offer and a great page on my website to send people. It's further deeper dive into making that work, because still the conversions weren't happening, aka new patients. And so what I did is, and I still even get this wrong, is I went, okay, well, let's go through the process actually as a client, potential client. And what I realized, and I should have realized sooner, was the very huge clunkiness of the sign up process. And literally I was clicking to sign up, and it took me into this wellness booking system where you're literally full health history, emergency contact, right?
Really conducive to onboarding a new client.
Right. I know. And I'm like, well, that's why. So straight away, we stopped that and we just had a web form. And then she had her receptionist calling people, and then had, we also had a, hey, not sure if this is right for you form where you can ask questions. And suddenly, boom, it worked. And that, to me, is massive, because suddenly she had this pipeline that she constantly could turn on and have new people coming into her practice at a very inexpensive cost per acquisition as well. I think it was like $30 to get a new patient in the door. So it's good. Yeah. And so things like that. And even restaurants, like there's a well-known restaurant here in Sydney, and I went up to, he's waterfront, and I said, what are you doing to promote, what you do? And he goes, oh, I just do a photo every now and then. And I said, John, like wow, you have a function center, you have waterfront views, you have, like, you make everything from scratch, this is incredible, and you don't talk about it. So even just kind of showing the beauty of this location and starting to talk around how he makes his sauces, or the team, right? That's where I start. It's like finding the magic in what the business does and being able to communicate it in a way that somebody really wants it. That would be the starting point, I suppose. And then from there, it's looking at the traffic that goes into that. And it's making sure that they have that whole sort of marketing funnel laid out, right? So how are we attracting new people? How are we following up with them to become repeat buyers as well? And making sure that the website's not confusing and scary. Literally simple paths, simple steps, and easy for people to find what they need really quickly.
So that's quite different from my experience with website designers.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, they've either taken a brief and they're more on the technical side, or they take the brief and they're more on the let's make it look nice side.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever worked with anyone like you who looks at the marketing strategy. Yeah. Because the website's a tool, isn't it?
Oh.
It's not a strategy in itself, it's a tool.
Brilliantly said.
So, to have that conversation at the start of how you look at, what are we creating here? What's our objective? What's going on? And really drilling down into it. I think that's so valuable, because I don't think the client does it, and I don't think a lot of website developers, if that's what they focus on, drill down into that marketing piece. So that's a huge amount of value for a business.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and you're right. You're very right. You have sort of a developer, generally speaking, in that space that will take a brief and build it. They need
Yeah,
you to tell
yeah.
them what you want, or you might have a designer that steps into
Yes.
that process. I'm sure, Jenny, you've heard the word reverse engineer, right? So it's quite one of those buzzwords in our space, but it's ultimately what I definitely do. Is like, well, what do you want? What are the clients you want? How many do you want? How are they going to come into your business? And then you have to look at wrapping the tools around that strategy to then make it happen. And that's the key, back to front, really, when you have a successful website that's actually going to perform for you and give you clients.
Yeah. And do you typically create a website from, say a client has one that's not working. Do you
Yes.
typically recreate, or can you reverse engineer an existing one and rework it?
Both, absolutely both. Some of the larger companies that are much more established and have more stakeholders, let's say,
Yeah.
those ones will generally start with an audit and suggestions of change and like low hanging fruit, right? So look at the Google Analytics, understand what's currently happening on the site, keywords, SEO, that sort of stuff. And then say, okay, well, if we know that these are the top 3 most visited pages on your site, naturally that's a great place to start. So let's optimize those pages already, because they are landing pages for you. And can we make them easier to be found? There's a business I'm doing that with right now who works in construction, and they had these 3 areas of the site, actually 2 for them, 2 core areas of the site that they get all their customers from, but they're buried, interestingly enough, deeper into submenus in the menu. So straight away, it's like, well, no, let's put them straight front and center. Let's optimize those pages, because there's no actual next step or any place for somebody to take action with you.
Yeah.
So I will tend to do that with the larger people first, or the businesses, and do that. And sometimes that's a good foot in the door for me for longer term work. But then if you're kind of at a place where you're revamping, as we suggested before, simplifying maybe your offerings, it's a perfect time to start again and redevelop your positioning and your messages and your design and just redo.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned SEO and all of that.
Yes.
Where does that fit in? Like, obviously, it's part of your analysis up front, like what's happening and how are people finding you, what are they searching, and is that like you feed that analysis into what you recreate with the website?
Yeah.
But is there something that small businesses should be doing with SEO, or what should that mean to us? Is it about just putting it into blog posts? Is it
Yeah.
making sure it's working in our website as a primary thing? What should we be looking at with SEO, if anything?
Such a good question and loaded question, because
Yeah,
SEO
I know
is
it's a
one
big
of
one.
those. Yeah, I know it's good.
But I had to ask you
I love it.
because I don't know.
I love it. So here's the thing. So SEO, if you're going to go out and pay somebody to do search engine optimization, I'll start with what it is, because I think that will help as well, give context. So SEO is roughly, there's 2 facets to it. There's on-site SEO, where you have your titles of your pages with keyword phrases, and your images are named that phrase, and you cross-linking using keyword phrases. You might have a phrase on one page and you link it to another page on your site. So there's a work to be done on-site. And then there is off-site, which is basically the backlinking, right? So getting your site on other people's websites linked into yours. When you're paying an SEO company, you're oftentimes, the majority of that is for the backlinks that you're trying to get them to do. The problem is that it can be very expensive very quickly, and you are never guaranteed a result, and you can work hard for 6 months and never see a result because everyone else might be doing SEO too.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. And I was even just talking to a client of mine who, she's so frustrated because she's like, this other company that's newer than me, they're higher up in the search results. And I looked and I said, well, they have 79,000 backlinks. I don't know how they did it. They probably paid a lot of money to SEO, and you have 3,000. So it's going to make a difference. And I then put context in it. And I said, look, but they're trying to sell to the, B2C, and you're actually trying to sell to businesses. So the keyword that you actually analyzed is actually not accurate for your outcomes. So you have to look at it differently. So I digress. So basically that's what you're paying for SEO. And it is tricky. What I do recommend for every business owner, that regardless, that it's important to do, is do keyword research, find out what your potential market would be searching for, and optimize your site on site. So making sure your SEO plugins, or your titles and your meta descriptions, your images are named using phrases. That's a really great use of somebody's time. But the backlinks, that's tricky, and you probably have to pay somebody for that.
Yeah, I don't like the sound of the backlinks. I did that exercise once before, and it just seemed to go on forever and didn't really work that well.
It's challenging. If you're going to spend $3,000 a month for an SEO agency, you might as well put that into ads where you know exactly what your ROI is and keep working and trying to make that happen, perhaps.
Yeah. And even the on-site SEO, the way you described it there, it's obviously that's the important bit.
Yeah.
But, most people need help. That's got to be set up by someone, because, the average business person doesn't know how to get into their website and set up all their SEO and all of that business. But it is important, and it will help.
Agreed. I absolutely agree. And that could be something you could be trained on or have a team member do if they know how to do it. But yeah, there's definitely value in that for sure.
Yeah. And lots of service-based businesses in particular, I think, get most of their leads from referrals. So, and that's great. And they don't worry about marketing, and they don't worry about lead generation. But as good as referrals are, you have no control over them, as we know. What sort of things should service business owners in particular be thinking about to add to their referral leads that come in, and thinking about things that they can control in their lead generation funnel?
Yeah, really smart.
Yeah.
Okay, so first things first, I would still focus on your referral partners, definitely, but maybe even make it more structured, because that is, as we know, word of mouth marketing in services is incredibly powerful. So I would still focus on that, but maybe make it more structured, where you actually have a quarterly lunch with your referral partners, or catch up, or just giving, almost like nurturing your partners as well. Reporting. So with some of my partners, I'll actually give them little reports and keep them up to date on what's happening with the clients that they refer to me. So looking at that differently would be important. And also recognizing that even though you might have referral business that comes in, oftentimes the person that's referring you, the person that they're referring will actually go Google you straight away, and they're still going to go through your website. I've definitely had people say, oh, so-and-so recommended me, and I went to their website, and then it was such a letdown, I decided not to go with them.
Understandable.
Yeah. But yes, as you said, it's not consistent. So how do you actually get out there and look at your own leads coming in? I'll go back to that LinkedIn agency and how they started recognizing, well, events for them worked really, really well. There's an outsourcing company, a friend of mine that runs this huge outsourcing company in the Philippines. I think they have something like 200 employees now. She knows that being on, interestingly, podcasts is her biggest source of leads. So she's hired a company that gets her on really great targeted podcasts for her. So I think it's starting to look at what you're doing now outside of referrals, if anything. Is there anything that's working specifically from that, and double downing on that? And if you haven't done anything yet at all in marketing, it's starting to just test different channels and see what might work. But ultimately, where does your market hang out? And then that's where you start.
Yeah, I love that, because I think, first of all, with referral partners, that's something I talk to my clients about all the time. When we get to look at their client base and just what's happening with the client base, how they're servicing that, where opportunities for growth are, all of that bigger picture, how strong the relationships are, who's at risk. The referral partners are often forgotten. It's like, well, this person has referred 5 new clients to you in the last year.
Yeah.
What have you done to thank them?
Yeah.
Oh no, they know I appreciate it. It's like that's not what I'm talking about. You need to thank and reward, and I love what you said about having quarterly lunches, you know, as an example, because they are an asset in their own right that you really need to nurture and protect and just make sure that relationship is strong. And they're so often forgotten. So I love that you said referral partners, because that's a real thing for me. What are you doing with your referral partners?
Oh,
And also I love that example you gave, the LinkedIn agency, because, you know, I know that when we do events and, you know, you invite clients or just people who you know or people you work with, and they might bring other people as well. You give them a great experience.
Yes.
And, you know, that has its own rewards. It's not social media. It's not, you know, digital marketing, which, you know, everything has a place. But I know that that has worked because it's a personal business. It's one-on-one. It's, you know, all about relationships. So knowing what works, as you said, is so important. Just start with what's worked in the past. You know, if you've done anything that's worked in the past, what have you had good feedback from? And then start with that, as opposed to trying to do what you think you should be doing. That's the dangerous word, should.
Should.
Yeah. So I love what you said about that. I really do.
Thank you. And yeah, I agree with what you're saying so much. And I think the other thing too is always remember in marketing, there's something called the rule of 7, which now is, people say it's like the rule of 35, but it essentially implies 7 touch points until somebody makes a decision to become your customer. And so with that in mind, it can take time, and also not just because you're doing something on LinkedIn, for example, and you're like, oh, not, you know, it's not working, doesn't mean it's not working. Because there's a recruitment company that I did work with before, and we were just doing some like boosted company posts on LinkedIn, just educational content, interesting kind of behind the scenes content. And then he would go out and do industry events. And ultimately, after 6 months of doing these sort of awareness ads on LinkedIn, he had people starting to come up to him saying, oh my gosh, I've seen your content. And it opened that door for that relationship for them to then have the conversation in person. So that's another interesting thing about marketing too, is just because, you know, it might take time. It might literally take time to warm up those relationships as well. But you do want to have, like you just said, a conversion moment, a point where somebody puts their hand up and says, I'm ready to be your customer, and making sure that you know what that is and working to know what that is and develop it further.
Exactly. And it does take time.
Yeah.
You know, I think sometimes there can be a propensity to get frustrated when you read about other people. You know, we did this, you know, amazing email marketing campaign, and we generated X million dollars in turnover. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. The email database had 300,000 people on it. So let's put it into perspective. But it does take time and consistency. And that's why I think if you just pick something, like for me, it's LinkedIn, and all the other things, they just don't happen. It's LinkedIn, because that's where my people hang out.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I tried to do Facebook and X and everything else, there's not enough time and it would be diluted. But for me, it's LinkedIn and other things.
Smart.
So I think just start with something achievable and just keep it going.
Yeah. Well said, Jenny. Well said. Agree.
So my last question is, what would you say is the most important return on investment for having an effective website and a digital marketing game plan?
I always look at the customer lifetime value. That to me is most important, is because if you have good marketing machine, then you're not just focused on the lead acquisition, which a lot of businesses are. Like, they'll go out and try and do their ads or whatever it is, and go, oh, it cost me $200 to get a new lead in the door. But then how much are they going to spend over 5-10 years of being with you? Is it $10,000? Okay, well, that's no brainer. So it's looking at the long-term success rather than that initial entry point. There's so many businesses that literally know this, and they'll go, okay, well, I'm happy to lose money at the start of my marketing, or do what's called a loss leader. I'm happy to lose money because I know that my marketing machine's so good that the profit and everything is going to happen maybe 6 months, 1 year, 3 years down the track. And I'm okay with that. It's a long-term play. So that's what I look at, is ultimately the machine, all the touch points, rather than just focusing on that front end of your marketing.
Yeah. Great advice. Now, I'm sure a lot of people who hear this are going to want to get in touch with you, and I'll put all your contact details in the show notes. But what is the best way for anyone to get in touch with you?
Very good question. Easy, websitelove.com.au. There are 2 sections I'll draw your attention to. There's something on my site that says free resources. That is a library of amazing things, including my podcast, but trainings and downloads and cheat sheets for your marketing. And then there's also a website blueprint call that I offer, where go through a process with myself and my team to literally look at low-hanging fruit and what can be done to get you guys better results with your marketing.
Fantastic. Spoken like a true marketer. Thank you so much, Heather. That was great. I could sit here and chat to you about marketing for ages, but we need to wrap it up. But it's been great talking to you. Thank you.
It's been fantastic being here as well. Thank you, and thank you, listeners, as well.
And that's all for today's episode of the 7% Club. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, wherever you are in the world, remember, better strategy, better business, better life.